Hello loyal viewers! You may have noticed that for the first time ever, I'm actually rocking an avatar. Going forward, this is how my reviews, video essays, and countdowns will be structured from here on. I hope you all like it. After all, this avatar that you're seeing right now was drawn by yours truly. If anyone watching this has an interest in checking and keeping up with my more artistic endeavors, feel free to follow me over on my Blue Sky. Link to that will be in the description down below. Anyways, as the title suggests, I'm going to be giving my quick overall thoughts on the newest SpongeBob game by Purple Lamp Studios. Before that, however, I want to quickly give my overall opinions on the previous games by the studio as well. Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, as far as a remaster goes, because let's face it, that's pretty much what it was, is perfectly serviceable. Obviously, it's still the same game that many older SpongeBob fans, like yours truly, know and love, and now, with arguably much better visuals and whatnot, it's much easier to get a copy and enjoy this blast from the past than it was back then. The Cosmic Shake was definitely a huge step in the right direction, and I honestly had a ton of fun with it. Lack of other playable characters and a mediocre final boss notwithstanding. The former being made up for a little bit with tons of new moves that thankfully do carry over to the previously mentioned subject of today's review. And so, with all that out of the way, here are my quick overall thoughts on Titans of the Tide. Story-wise, it's largely spelled out for you in the subtitle of the game. Here you're exploring new and, at the same time, familiar areas as you try to restore Bikini Bottom from an increasingly petty squabble between the Flying Dutchman and King Neptune. Really, that's about it. But, at the same time, that's all any of us could really ask for. And it's thankfully peppered with some honestly funny jokes a lot of the times, and plenty of fan service for older fans, and even a few for newer fans. Speaking of, as an older SpongeBob fan myself, the cosmetics that you unlock in this game are some of my absolute favorites out there, including a few from the SpongeBob SquarePants movie itself. Likewise, there's also plenty of other Easter eggs to old school SpongeBob sprinkled throughout the entire game as well, two of them in which are actually a big part of the gameplay in differing ways. From the BFF rings from the Secret Box episode being used as an in-game explanation for being able to switch between Sponge and Pat instantly, to Sandy's monstrous form from Survival of the Idiots being a friggin' boss fight. Needless to say, this game, much like the previous one, was clearly made by fans for fans. And don't worry, younger fans, like I said, there's at least a few notable references to more modern SpongeBob episodes, including Plankton's pet Spot. I'll talk a little bit more about Plankton here in a moment. Gameplay-wise, it's more of what you've come to expect if you played the previous games, and I do mean that in a good way. For starters, like I mentioned before, you play as both SpongeBob and Patrick, and, like I also said earlier, you can switch between them instantly. And what I love too is that the game is very much so built with this in mind, and it does lead to some genuinely fun and even sometimes challenging platforming, especially later on based on specific moves that the Sponge and Star can pull off. And on that note, not only are the environments in this game absolutely gorgeous and swimming with personality, so to speak, but the level design is also, for the most part, very well thought out and interconnected nicely. My personal favorite in this regard, as great as the levels are overall, would have to be Neptune's Palace and how well all of its different pathways connect back to the main hall. Combat's not that different from the previous games though, and I do love how well the different movesets for our main characters can be used on certain enemies to take them out, such as the cannonball shooting enemies for instance. Speaking of combat, the bosses in this game are really good. I do still prefer the bosses in Battle for Bikini Bottom overall, but these bosses I personally find to be a step up from the previous ones, especially the final fight against both King Neptune and the Flying Dutchman. It is so much fun, especially during the second phase when they both decide to gang up on you at the same time. It's just so good. Another gameplay aspect that they brought back from the Cosmic Shake that I want to quickly talk about and highlight is the boulder riding segments in both levels 3 and 4. Now I don't know what others think of these segments, but for my money, I like these parts a lot. They kind of make me think a little bit of the sphere rolling levels from Wrath of Cortex in terms of how they control what with the turning and especially the weight in some instances. And personally, as much as I do like those levels, I think these are more fun to control thanks in large part due to the camera still being freeformed and, on top of that, are only a small section of a much larger level still primarily dominated by the core platforming. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, it leads to a much healthier balance. So yeah, thus far I've been mainly singing this game's praises, and you might be wondering, does this game have any notable problems? Yeah, and while they are relatively minor, they do bother me just a little bit. Firstly, and I'm aware that this could just be a me problem, but much like the previous game, there's no important collectible in this game whatsoever. Oh sure, there are collectibles such as the treasure chests and the hidden TV sets, but there's no main collectibles made that are required to get a certain amount of in order to progress through the game, akin to the golden spatula from Battle for Bikini Bottom or even the Goofy Goober tokens from the SpongeBob movie game. And speaking of collectibles, the aforementioned treasure chests, on top of containing coins and cosmetic unlocks, also contain scrap metal. What's this for, you might be wondering? Well, if you happen to buy the Plankton Portal Challenge DLC separately, assuming you only got the base game, you can access fun little challenge missions back at the game's main hub area, that being a giant hot air balloon known simply as the Floating Patty. Some of these actually kind of remind me a bit of the optional challenge levels in the main platforming sections of the SpongeBob movie game. And while these challenge missions are definitely fun, I'm not entirely sure that they're worth forking over $10 extra for. Again, assuming you didn't get the Ghostly edition of the game. And finally, to wrap things up, while I thankfully only encountered these instances a few times, I did have one moment where the game did in fact crash and I had to boot it back up, along with one instance where the game soft locked as I was playing the patty flipping minigame back on the Floating Patty, and finally, one where the sound, for some strange reason, started acting up big time during a combat section on the Floating Patty, forcing me to have to restart the game as, unfortunately, reloading a previous save didn't really help me. Like I said, these moments were rare, but they do highlight how this, and to a lesser extent the Cosmic Shake, probably could have used an extra month to iron out the kinks and all. Overall, while it's still hard to say definitively whether I like this more than the Cosmic Shake, which I already really enjoyed, this is yet another really good SpongeBob game by Purple Lamp Studios, and I am super looking forward to what they cook up next. No pun intended. I'm kinda hoping that they give the movie game the rehydrated treatment, as that's easily, and I am not even exaggerating when I say this, one of the best movie tie-in games ever. Hashtag rehydrate the movie game. And folks, that about does it for November and Bikini Bottom. I honestly do feel bad for not having done a whole lot of SpongeBob related content this month, or indeed content here on my YouTube channel overall throughout, but let's be real, 2025 was a major shit show all around, what with the political climate, as well as some of the worst weather that many of us in the US had to put up with, including a really bad tornado outbreak that happened in early April that, while thankfully we were lucky to avoid, left me in a state of major unease throughout the rest of spring and even early summer. It's made even worse by the fact that my grandmother unfortunately passed away the same day that the previously mentioned outbreak happened. So, yeah, hopefully with that explanation you can all at least somewhat understand my absence. I'm hopeful that 2026 will be at least somewhat better in comparison, though only time will tell for sure. As of right now, I'm gonna make damn well sure going forward that I can make as much content as possible before next spring, which, like usual, is where my output will inevitably slow down by quite a bit under the best of circumstances. And I do hope that all of you will be there when each and every single one of them is done and ready. Until then, I'm King Gargantuas, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.